Hey there, hey, this is Mike. Hey, I'm just having to go for a drive here because I'm all aggravated. I just stopped at one of my warehouse, where we keep a lot of the tools and stuff for when we have guys work for us, and somebody broke in and robbed me. And you know what? My first thoughts were I want to kill them. My second thought is, you know what? I am now faced with two choices. They took probably $8,000 or $10,000 worth of stuff from my Yamaha generator and a Honda mini bike and a bunch of fun stuff, but I now have two choices. I can either A, consider beating them to death if I find them, which is probably not real productive for my mental condition right now, or I can shake it up and say, hey, you know what? Life happens, we got problems, so let's move on, right? Which is probably what I'm going to do, even though I'm going for a drive here so I can calm down. But let me tell you a positive story. I had a house for sale, and boy, hold on, I haven't driven this big old diesel truck I have for a while. I'm a little bit rusty, but I got this house for sale, and I went ahead and posted it on Zillow. Now, Zillow.com, most people have heard of Zillow. That's where a lot of real estate is bought, sold, and listed. And I've been getting calls from people, and a young man called me up and he said, hey, is your house still for sale? Now, truthfully, I just literally accepted an offer and just sold this one. But I said, well, what do you want to know? He said, well, I'm calling about your house for sale. And I said, is this what you do? You cold call? He said, yeah, I do. I said, no kidding. How's that working for you? He said, well, I bought 5 houses. I said, tell me about it. And he simply said, when I call people, I ask them if they would consider selling the property on terms. Now, what terms mean? That means if I would agree to sell the property on terms, I'm agreeing to give him a certain amount of time where he can buy my house, and I'm going to ask for some money down if I choose to do this, and we're going to agree on a payment, and then I literally again become the bank. And I said, how has this been working? He said, well, I got 5 of them. And I said, well, how are you marketing the houses? What he does is he actually, when he goes to sell the house, I said, do you just rent them? Do you just do the buy and hold method? And he said, no, I sell my houses on a lease option. Now let me explain what a lease option is. That means when you're selling a house on a lease option, you are agreeing to lease them the property, and along with that, you agree to give them a specified period of time, usually a couple, 2 or 3 years, where they have the option to buy it, and you agree to lock in a price. Now, the reason a lot of people, when you're selling a house with a lease with an option to buy, it's actually great for you, the seller, because you lock in your price, you know what the terms are, there's no funny business later, and usually you can put in there things like, well, the buyer agrees to pay closing costs, things like that. Another thing that happens is, it's also great for the person buying the house. Why? Well, let's say the market appreciates and goes up, and a house was a $150,000 house, but when you agree to give them the rights to buy it for $150,000, but down the road, let's say it's suddenly worth $200,000, they still have the rights to lock it in and to buy it for the $150,000. Now, what happens? Somebody said, what if the market goes down, right? Could happen. Well, the good news is it's an option for them to buy, which means they don't have to buy. They're not locked in, but they can back out of the contract. Now, usually for the rights to have an option to buy, they have to give you what's called a non-refundable option deposit. In other words, a fee. Usually $5,000 is pretty much a minimum, which means if they decide to opt out and to not exercise their option to not buy, then you, the seller, you get to keep their non-refundable option money. Here's another nice thing about lease options. If you're selling the house on a lease with an option to buy, you generally say to the potential buyer, listen, I'm going to treat you like a homeowner. In other words, if the house needs repairs, don't call me, take care of it. If it needs a water heater, for instance, guys and gals, if you already own a house, if your water heater breaks down, you don't call the bank and say, hey, listen here, Mr. Bank of America, my water heater's breaking down, it's springing a leak, I need you to come over and fix it. No, because if you called the bank, guess what they would say? Hey, listen, ding-a-ling, go ahead and fix the water heater, right? Do what you got to do. It's part of being a homeowner. Well, when we offer a lease with an option, we generally say you're responsible for repairs, and we put that into the contractual agreement. Now, somebody asked me, well, Mike, what if they don't agree to that? Well, they don't have to agree to it, right? I will promise you this. If you choose to sell a house on an option to buy, you will be absolutely astounded and shocked at the amount of people that will apply. Why? Because guess what you're paying when you're renting a house? You're paying 100% interest. That means 100% of the money when you're renting a house is at a complete loss, a waste of money. At least if you have an option to buy, you have the rights to do this. you have the rights or the possibility of making money. Now that young man that I talked to, guess what happened? He sold 5 houses on a lease option, and his average spread is between $250 to $300 a month average profit. Let me put that in perspective. Let's say he agrees to lease a house from me for, let's just pick a number, say $600 a month, and he leases it out to somebody else. He turns around and remarkets the house to a new potential tenant buyer. He gets the spread, or in other words, the difference. So if he leases it to them for $900 a month, and he's agreed to pay me $600 a month, every time his new tenant buyer makes a payment, he makes $300. Well, he's got 5 of these things. Do you understand that gives him a raise of approximately $1,500 a month? Now think about this. How many people, if you went to your boss and said, hey, I need a raise, and your boss would say, well, how much do you need? And you said, I'd like to have an extra $1,500 a month. I bet you your boss is going to go, are you crazy? I might give you 50 cents an hour, right? I might give you 25 cents an hour. You might even get $1 an hour. I don't know. But they're probably not going to say, well, how about we give you $1,500 a month? So the great thing about lease options are they work. I've done tons and tons and tons of them. In fact, my friend, the great Andy G, he's done so many, I don't even know if he can count them anymore. But what's nice about this young man I talked to, he literally has no lead cost. You know why? He's on Zillow. He goes on there and he looks up people that have houses for sale by owner. Now, why does he choose them? Well, if the person in the house that's selling the house has got it listed as for sale by owner, that means there's no realtor's commissions to pay. There's no closing cost until he's ready. And he locks these in. He simply negotiates it. He asked me, what would you take for your house? I said, what do you got in mind? He says, well, I'll give you 10% down, and if we create a payment. Of course, I was having fun. I quizzed him for a little bit, and then I come clean, and I said, hey, listen, buddy, I just sold the house, but I kind of wanted to see what your program was. And he was like, I missed it. All right. But see, I just wanted to give you a short version of this is a lease option. Now, don't get hung up on the 10% down right there. Why? If you find what we call a motivated seller, you find somebody that's behind in payments or about to be behind, or they're getting a divorce, or they're close to filing bankruptcy, or maybe they got a job transfer and they've got to move out of state. Maybe they live in Ohio and they're going to move back to Florida or Oklahoma or wherever. If they want to sell it, they're not trained professionals. They may not even ask you for a down payment. I may say, a lot of times I'll say, hey, I'm willing to take over your house and I'll guarantee the taxes, the payments, the maintenance, and the insurance until I resell it and find a tenant buyer. Now, sometimes they will ask you, well, why would you do this? I always let them know right up front, listen, I'm not trying to be just a good guy. I'm not trying to just help people. In fact, I've heard people say, I just want to help people. Oh, shut up, you know they're lying. If they just wanted to help people, they'd grab a set of jumper cables and drive around town, right? So, I always say, here's what's going to happen. I need to be very clear about this. I'm going to resell your house, and my full intention is to make a profit. So if I get you to agree to sell me your house for, say, $100,000, and I can resell it down the road, let's say I give somebody an option to buy that house for, say, $124,900, right, $125,000. Well, if they give me, say, $5,000 or $10,000 down, I get that money now. And if I'm going to make a spread of $250 or $300 a month, I make that every single month. And let's say I do that for 2 years. Now, here's what's cool. Another thing about a lease option. If they agreed to buy my house on a lease with an option to buy, they are leasing it until they exercise the option, which means no money actually comes off the price. So if I'm making, say, $300 a month or $250 a month, let's just use the number of $300 for round off numbers. That means at the end of a year, I picked up an extra $3,600. If they do it for 2 years, I made $7,200. Plus, at the end of the period of time, if they give me $10,000 down, they agreed to buy the house for $125,000. What do they owe me? Well, we can all do math, right? Here I am doing math on camera, go figure. But if you take $125,000, they give you $10,000 down. What that means is they still owe you $115,000, right? Meanwhile, the underlying mortgage that if I took it over subject to has been paying itself down. Now I'm going to pick up my $3,600 this year, my $3,600 next year, and then I'm going to make a $15,000 profit at the end in 2 years, 3 years. Somebody said, what if they don't exercise the option? Listen, if they decide to not exercise your option, not that I don't want them to become a homeowner, I do. But if they don't exercise the option, we don't get upset and panic. We go, holy smoke, how great is that? Why? I get to do it again. I get to collect another non-refundable option fee. I'm going to build this in, and they've been responsible for repairs. So the lease options are tremendous. And you literally could go on Zillow, and before you start calling people, you can look up information on the houses. You can do a search and say, I only want to find houses that are at least a 3-bedroom and a 2-bath. Why is that? Well, if you're dealing with houses that are a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, we'll have a bigger pool of people that are interested in them, a bigger potential buyers pool, right? We don't want the 1-bedrooms. We don't want the 16 bedrooms. Now, being sarcastic here, but we want the houses that are sellable for us. These things work. Guys and gals, if you start looking into this, if you simply got on Zillow and you made this promise to yourself, tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to take 1 hour a day. Hi there. I'm going to take 1 hour a day, and I'm going to talk to 5 people this hour. Or maybe you could talk to 10 people an hour. And you did that for every day for a week. Do you know if you talk to 10 people every day for a week, at the end of a week, you would have talked to 70 people. Now listen, if you had 90% of the people say, no, absolutely not, I'm not doing it, I wouldn't sell my house in terms no matter what, you would still have 7 people of the 70, which is 10%, say, well, I might. Let's talk. What do you got in mind? Why would they do that? Because if they are either a motivated seller, meaning they're either behind or about to be behind, or they've gotten a divorce, or they got the job transfer. Again, life happens. You have to understand, divorces happen in good economies, divorces happen in bad economies. Maybe there's a death, maybe there's an illness, something happens. It's sheerly and purely a numbers game. So this is Mike saying, listen, I don't want to drive you crazy, but don't be afraid. We're going to look more into this at another time. But just imagine if you simply had the cojones, the chutzpah, or any other clever word you want to think, where you said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my phone calls, and I'm hoping that 9 out of 10 people a day tell me no, because if only 9 out of 10 people tell me no, I have a chance to make $5, $10, $15, $20,000. For instance, how much would $10, $15, $20,000, maybe $30,000? How much would that affect you next month? Because you see, if you take over a house and you put it under contract, which I'm going to be showing you how to do, even you put it under the contract, if you have a contractual interest, an equitable interest in that house, you have the rights to market it. And no, you do not need a real estate license. Get that out of your head. You don't have to be a realtor. You could be putting $10,000, $15,000 a month in your pocket this month, next month, the next month after that, the following month after that. You see, if I could only increase your income by an extra $100,000 a year, again, if that don't light your fire, guys and gals, your wood is wet. So this is Mike getting ready to sign off here. I went for a drive. I feel better here, especially since somebody ripped me off. Now, you got to pray for me a little bit, because I still want to find him and beat him with a 2 before. I feel like they did me wrong. It ain't the fact that I can't afford it. It's the fact that they took my stuff. But you know what? Again, I can zero in on the negative, or I can zero in on the positive. I'm going to do my best to be positive here. So this is Mike saying over and out. Talk to you soon.